Okay, I think we're about ready. We're going to start with our same prayer that we've been praying, and then we'll delve into. You can turn to chapter 13 if you're getting prepared, of chapter 13 of Judges. So pray with me this morning. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who is faithful even when your people are faithless, who is mighty to redeem when your people are weak in every way, who is even now continuing to work to set all things right and inviting us into the process to participate. Teach us your ways, O Lord, as we study your word this morning. Reshape us into the people you would have us be. Make us holy as you are holy. Amen. Okay, we need to take stock a little bit before we start this morning to prepare us for what we're going to be looking at in Judges 13 to start. You'll recall this handout from the very first days of our lesson. And you remember up at the top, we had that circular repeating cycle that I took the liberty to redefine as not just a circular cycle, but a downward spiral that we see in Judges. And so, thinking back through what we've covered in Judges so far, you don't have to go back and look at these verses, but listen to this. In chapter 1, we had in the introduction the people turning to God and inquiring of the Lord, who's going to lead us? So they were seeking God's guidance before anything actually happened. Then in chapter 3, when we got to the first judge, we had the people crying out to the Lord immediately, understanding that he was their source of help. Then we went on a little further and we got to the story of Deborah, and we have the people turning to God and crying out to help for his help because they understood that he was the source of help. Then we got to chapter 6 to the story of Gideon, and the people cried out, and God sent them a prophet to explain to them what they were doing wrong. Because by this time, apparently, they have sort of lost the understanding of where they're going wrong in all of this. So then, after Gideon, we had, remember Gideon's infamous son Abimelech. Abimelech never even mentions God. In the story of Abimelech, he doesn't ever even give notice that there is a God. But at the end of that chapter, you see verses 56 and 7 that God is still active. Even if his people are unaware of him, he is still working, which is an important point. Then in chapter 10, we got stories about the people crying out, and God pushes back on them. And he says, if you need help, ask those gods that you've adopted, those other gods, down in verse 14. And then in verse 16, we see that they realized they had to put away those other gods. It's like they hadn't even realized that was a problem. Then, let's see, we got over into chapter 11, and we had Jephthah, who made this inadvisable vow. Uh, he we talked about being influenced by culture in the way we relate to God. So even their approach to God is getting corrupted. So you see why this downward spiral seems to be important here. And today we're in chapter 13. We're going to be talking about Samson today. This is a juicy one. So we're going to be talking about Samson. But you'll notice in the stories of Samson, the people don't even cry out for help. So by this time, they're not even turning to God to look for his help. They've lost that connection. It seems completely. Um, and throughout the story of Samson, you're going to see the impact of that. Samson is the last of the judges in this collection of stories. And you remember we said that probably these were individual stories that were written down, and then in the time of Samuel were all collected and put together. So Judges, more than any other of the books in the Bible, seems to be this random, well, not random, but this collection of stories written by different people at different times about these leaders, these judges that God sent to help the people. And so today we turn to a couple of um, segments that were written about Samson. And Samson is, as you know, a tragic figure. So he's a flawed man. Um, he is unfaithful. He is careless with the promises of God. He's reckless with his own life. And God helps him anyway. Um, so let's begin. Chapter 13. The people of Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. So the Lord gave them into the hand of the Philistines for 40 years. You remember the Philistines? They are probably remnants of the sea peoples who invaded during the collapse of the Bronze Age, and they've settled along the coast. So they are between the tribes and the Mediterranean Sea. And they're a aggressive group of people. They are a uh, independent uh, collection of uh, five cities, the five main cities of the Philistines. And each of those cities has a leader, and the cities collaborate with each other to protect themselves and to invade other areas. And the Philistines are a continuing story from now on through the next hundreds of years. So here's the Philistines. And among the Israelites, we get a focus on one couple. There was a certain man of Zorah, of the tribe of the Danites, whose name was Manoah. His wife was barren and had no children. And the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, Behold, you are barren and have not borne children, but you shall conceive and bear a son. Now, this brings echoes of the angel coming to Mary saying, Yeah, I know you're a virgin, but you're going to have a baby. So this is an echo that we get here uh, of the future events that will come. But he tells her, Be careful not to drink wine or strong drink, and eat nothing unclean. For behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. No razor shall come upon his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to save Israel from the hand of the Philistines. All right. So the angel comes, angel of the Lord comes, um, possibly the pre incarnate Christ, and tells her, you're going to have a son. And not only that, he's Nazarite from birth. Well, if you look in Numbers 6, 1 through 21, you find the description of the Nazarite vow. And the Nazarite vow was intended to be a period of total devotion to God that a person would undertake at certain times in their lives. And so, we see later Paul taking a vow, probably a Nazarite vow. But typically, when you took a Nazarite vow, you didn't drink any strong drink. You didn't made sure you stayed away from anything unclean, particularly dead bodies of any type, and you didn't cut your hair. And it set you apart as a person under a vow to God. But the main purpose of it all was to have total devotion to God during the period of your vow. Well, in Samson's case, his mother is told, it's starting now when you conceive, and he's going to be under a Nazarite vow his entire life. He's set apart for God. He's expected to be totally devoted to God his whole life. It sounds a little bit like Hannah and the little boy Samuel. Um, so here's this story. Then the woman, and one other thing. Note it says, he shall begin to save Israel from the hand of the Philistines. He does not say Samson is going to save them. He says he's going to begin. So that's important as we move through this story. Then the woman came and told her husband, a man of God came to me, and his appearance was like the appearance of the angel of God, very awesome. I did not ask him where he was from, and he did not tell me his name. But he said to me, behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. So then drink no wine or strong drink, and eat nothing unclean, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb to the day of his death. It's kind of ominous that before the child even comes, the angel's talking about his death. Maybe a foreshadowing of the tragic life that he'll lead. Then Manoah prayed to the Lord and said, O Lord, please let the man of God whom you sent come again to us and teach us what we're to do with the child who will be born. This is a reasonable request. There's this special notice that this special child is coming. This child is very special indeed. Is there anything special I need to know as the father of this child? And God listened to the voice of Manoah, and the angel of God came again to the woman. Didn't send the man to Manoah, but he sent him again to the woman as she sat in the field. But Manoah, her husband, was not with her. So the woman ran quickly and told her husband, behold, the man who came to me the other day has appeared to me. And Manoah arose and went with his wife and came to the man and said, are you the man who spoke to this woman? And he said, I am. Now, I looked everywhere to see if this I am had any special significance. I couldn't find anybody who wanted to talk about it. So if you have some insight on this, message me and let me know. And Manoah said, now, when your words come true, what is the child's what is to be the child's manner of life, and what is his mission? And the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, of all that I said to the woman, let her be careful. I've already told your wife everything. I came, I told her, she's the mother, she needs to know. She's got all the information she needs. I don't know. Robert Alter, my Hebrew translator, sounds like the angel's a little annoyed with Manoah at this point. She may not eat of anything that comes from the vine, neither let her drink wine or strong drink or eat any unclean thing. All that I commanded her, let her observe. Now, it's interesting that when Manoah's in the conversation, the prohibition about cutting hair isn't mentioned there. Don't know what that means. Maybe the idea of not cutting the hair was just to be a deep, dark secret, because later we're going to find out that that secret is important. I don't, but it's not mentioned here when he talks to Manoah. So Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, please let us detain you and prepare a young goat for you. Now, this was customary, when you had a visitor. And the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, if you detain me, I will not eat of your food, but if you prepare a burnt offering, then offer it to the Lord. For Manoah did not know that he was the angel of the Lord. And Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, what is your name, so that when your words come true, we may honor you? And the angel of the Lord said to him, why do you ask my name, seeing it is wonderful? Now, this is translated different ways here. And it's interesting to meditate on what this answer means. It immediately makes us think of Isaiah 9, for to us a child is born, wonderful counselor, mighty God. Um, Same word there, wonderful. Um, and I wondered, maybe this means my name is so wonderful that it doesn't fit into words. My name is um, everything wonderful you could imagine. I don't know. So Manoah took the young goat with a grain offering and offered it on the rock to the Lord, to the one who works wonders. And Manoah and his wife were watching. And when the flame went up toward heaven from the altar, the angel of the Lord went up in the flame of the altar. Now Manoah and his wife were watching, and they fell on their faces to the ground. The angel of the Lord appeared no more to Manoah and to his wife. Then Manoah knew that he was the angel of the Lord. Uh, Robert Alter says, finally, Manoah realizes. And Manoah said to his wife, and this is predictable, isn't it? We shall surely die, for we've seen God. But his wife says to him, and here Manoah's wife, who doesn't even have a name, shows the most amazing common sense. She says, if the Lord had meant to kill us, he would not have accepted a burnt offering and a grain offering at our hands, or shown us all these things, or now announced to us such things as these. And the woman bore a son and called his name Samson, and the young man grew, and the Lord blessed him. Now that sounds a little bit like the verse about Jesus in Luke, where he grew in favor with God and man. And the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him in Mahanadan, between Zorah and Eshtaol. The word here, stir him, in the ESV that I'm using, apparently is a Hebrew word that gives the idea of pulsating in him, uh, a restless force, sort of a foreshadowing of the kind of person Samson is going to grow up to be. All right, chapter 14. The story continues. Now we've got Samson as a grown man. And you're going to start seeing what kind of man Samson is. Very first thing that we learn about Samson is he has spotted a woman he wants. This is a theme. Be prepared. It's going to happen more than once. So Samson went down to Timnah. Timnah was a town that was part Philistine, part Israelite. And in Timnah, he saw one of the daughters of the Philistines. Then he came up and told his father and mother, I saw one of the daughters of the Philistines at Timnah. Now get her for me as my wife. But his father and mother said to him, Is there not a woman among the daughters of your relatives or among all our people that you must go take a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines? But Samson said to his father, Get her for me, for she is right in my eyes. Yeah, okay. Apparently, the Hebrew there, right in my eyes, there are two things that we should note about that. It seems to indicate um, lust or physical attraction. It's just a carnal sort of um, attraction, apparently. But also, one of the most famous verses in Judges is one we haven't gotten to yet, where it says that every man does what was right in his own eyes. All right, so here's Samson saying, She's right in my eyes. So his father and mother did not know that it was from the Lord, for he was seeking an opportunity against the Philistines. Okay. Now, these are stories written down after the fact. And apparently, this is the narrator of the story saying, Mom and Dad didn't know about it, but God was involved in this. Now, I have an entire lesson we could teach on this verse, but we're not going to do that. Maybe on a Wednesday night someday. But there's all the way through the biblical text, verse after verse, where it says God got involved with something like this. And often it's something tragic. The one that always comes to my mind is Joseph. His brothers sell him into slavery, and then years and years and years later, in retrospect, Joseph says, "Well, God used it for good, for the feeding of many people, to save people from starving." Um, there are verses scattered all the way through the biblical text that say things like that. I've got a list here of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 references. And let me just say here, um, it isn't that, you've heard it said, everything happens for a reason. Um, it's more like everything that happens can be given a reason. Okay. Um, we tend to look at verses like this and ascribe cause and effect, but our God is a good father who gives good gifts. And I think we have a father who can take tragic threads in our life and weave them together for his good purposes. Um, we only get a glimpse of this in retrospect. We can't usually recognize when it's happening. But, Joseph getting sold into slavery was horrible. I mean, there was nothing about that was in any way good. But Joseph was later able to say that God used it for good. Here in Judges, I think that's what we've got. We've got the writer saying that, even though this was a tragic choice uh, of Samson's, God is going to take advantage of it and use it for good. So, Samson went down with his father and mother to Timnah. And on the way, apparently, Samson went on ahead. His parents aren't with him when this happens. They came to the vineyards of Timnah. Now, remember, under the Nazarite vow, he's not supposed to be drinking strong drink. So, whatever. And behold, a young lion came toward him roaring. And then the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him. And although he had nothing in his hand, he tore the lion in pieces as one tears a young goat. But he did not tell his father or his mother what he had done. Then he went down and talked with the woman, and she was right in Samson's eyes. All right. So we've got a vineyard here, which is off limits under the Nazarite vow, and we've got a dead carcass, a dead lion that's off limits under the Nazarite vow. But Samson talks to the woman, apparently proposes to her, and things are moving along. So after some days, he returned to take her, and he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion. I mean, he's not supposed to be around dead things. And behold, there was a swarm of bees in the body of the lion and honey. And he scraped it out into his hands and went on eating as he went. And he came to his father and mother, and he gave some to them, and they ate. But he did not tell them that he'd scraped the honey from the carcass of the lion. So his father went down to the woman, and Samson prepared a feast there. Now, this, pardon me, this, according to Timothy Keller, this is probably a drinking party, a stag party. It says, so he prepared a feast there, for so the young men used to do. And as soon as the people saw him, they brought 30 companions to be with him. Okay, he's there by himself. His friends aren't around. So the Philistines bring a bunch of guys to the party to help him celebrate. And Samson said to them, let me now put a riddle to you. Now, riddles were very popular at this time in history. And riddles tend to indicate a level of intelligence that we don't always associate with Samson. Several of the writers talk about this different side of Samson. This is a more intellectual side of Samson that we don't usually think of. I mean, when I think of Samson, I think about him turning on the lion and tearing him to shreds. And I get some vision of something related to the Hulk. My middle grandson, Judah, has been fascinated by the Hulk lately. And so, the Hulk came to mind when I was reading this. But apparently, he's also got some smarts to him. So he tells them this riddle. If you can tell me what it is within the 7 days of the feast and find it out, then I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes. But if you cannot tell me what it is, then you shall give me 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes. And they said to him, put your riddle that we may hear it. And he said to them, out of the eater came something to eat, out of the strong came something sweet. And in 3 days they could not solve the riddle. So on the 4th day they said to Samson's wife, entice your husband. That's basically the Hebrew word there's like seduce your husband, and tell us what the riddle is, lest we burn you and your father's house with fire. I mean, oh my goodness, this is taking a violent turn. Have you invited us here to impoverish us? You invited us to a party. We came to a party, and now we're in danger of being in debt because of it. Samson's wife wept over him and said, you only hate me. You do not love me. Don't you love this? You've put a riddle to my people, and you've not told me what it is. And he said to her, behold, I've not told my father or my mother. And shall I tell you? She wept before him the 7 days their feast lasted, and on the seventh day he told her, because she pressed him hard. Then she told the riddle to her people, and the men of the city said to him on the seventh day before the sun went down, "What is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion?" And he said to them, "If you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have found out my riddle." Okay. He's not only strong and apparently intelligent, he's also uh clever, humorous. So he's uh, Alter says that there are sexual overtones to this. If you had not plowed with my heifer, uh, if you'd not been intimate with my woman, uh, you wouldn't know this. And the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, and he went down to Ashkelon and struck down 30 men of the town, took their spoil, and gave the garments to those who had told the riddle. Okay, so he needs 30 sets of clothes, and he goes and kills 30 guys and takes their clothes. And apparently the Hebrew here for garments could have been armor. So it could have been not just fine linen, but it could have been even more valuable than that. And that would also indicate how powerful he was if he was able to overcome 30 men who were protected. Uh, so he pays off the debt, and in hot anger, I thought that was interesting. Hot anger, he went back to his father's house, and Samson's wife was given to his companion, who had been his best man. So one of the Philistines gets the woman instead of Samson. All right, chapter 15. Story continues. After some days, at the time of the wheat harvest, Samson went to visit his wife with a young goat, an offering, a gift. And he said, "I will go in to my wife in the chamber." This has sexual overtones to it here. But her father would not allow him to go in. And her father said, "I really thought you utterly hated her." Now, Samson had gotten very mad. Uh, he she had conspired with 30 men, and Samson stormed off in a huff. So the father, has some reason to think Samson was unhappy. "I really thought you utterly hated her, so I gave her to your companion. Is not her younger sister more beautiful than she? Please take her instead." And Samson said to them, "This time I shall be innocent in regard to the Philistines when I do them harm." So Samson went and caught 30 foxes and took torches. And he turned them tail to tail and put a torch between each pair of tails. And when he'd set fire to the torches, he let the foxes go into the standing grain of the Philistines and set fire to the stacked grain and the standing grain, as well as the olive orchards. Now, this is a disaster for the Philistines. Remember, up in verse 1, it said it was time of harvest. So what Samson's done here is he's wiped out their harvest for the whole year. Then the Philistines said, "Who has done this?" And they said, "Samson, the son-in-law of the Timnite, because he has taken his wife and given her to his companion." And the Philistines came up and burned her and her father with fire. Remember, they threatened to burn her and her father if she didn't find the answer for them? Well, so now they follow through with that. And Samson said to them, "If this is what you do, I swear I will be avenged on you. And after that, I will quit." And he struck them hip and thigh with a great blow and went down and stayed in the cleft of the rock at Etam. All right. So struck them hip and thigh is basically a murderous thrashing, basically. Um, it is interesting, and again, Timothy Keller pointed this out. He says, I swear I will be avenged on you. Um, Samson's actions so far, all of his violent actions, when he turns into the Hulk and does things, seem to be selfishly based. Me avenging myself. This is what I want. Very superficial. There's no language of Samson as a judge delivering Israel. It's Samson just running amok, basically. So that's an interesting point. It's also an interesting point to trace the theme of fire through the stories of Samson. Fire comes up over and over and over again. And Robert Alter says it's fitting because fire can be uncontrollable and destroy everything in its path. And that seems to be a metaphor for Samson. Um, so he goes down to the cleft in the rock at Edom. And the Philistines come up and encamped in Judah and made a raid on Lehi. And the men of Judah said, "Why have you come up against us?" And they said, "We've come up to bind Samson, to do to him what he did to us." Okay, more vengeance. Then 3,000 men of Judah went down to the cleft of the rock at Edom and said to Samson, "Do you not know that the Philistines are rulers over us? What then is this that you've done to us?" And he said to them, "As they did to me, so I have done to them." Okay, cycles of violence here. Um, and they said to him, "We've come down to bind you that we may give you into the hands of the Philistines." And Samson said to them, "Okay, swear to me that you will not attack me yourselves." And they said, "No, we won't do that. We'll only bind you and give you into their hands, and we will surely not kill you." So they bound him with two new ropes, those are strongest ones, and brought him up from the rock. Now, apparently, Samson doesn't want to um, kill his fellow tribesmen, his blood brothers, other Israelites. So he makes them promise that they're not going to hurt him so that he won't go all vengeful on them. And they turn him over to protect themselves. And the Bible doesn't ever say whatever happened to them. They just turned him over. But when he came to Lehi, the Philistines were shouting to meet him. Then the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him. Pardon me. And the ropes, pardon me, that were on his arms became as flax that has caught fire again. And his bonds melted off his hands. And he found a fresh jawbone of a donkey and put out his hand and took it, and with it struck 1,000 men. And Samson said, "With the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps, and the jawbone of a donkey have I struck down 1,000 men." And as soon as he finished speaking, he threw away the jawbone out of his hand, and that place was called Ramath Lehi. That's basically Jawbone Hill. And a fresh jawbone, of course, would be not dry and brittle, would be strong. And he was very thirsty, and he called upon the Lord and said, "You've granted this great salvation by the hand of your servant, and shall I now die of thirst and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised?" And God split open the hollow place that is at Lehi, and water came out of it. And when he drank, his spirit returned, and he revived. Therefore, the name of it was called En Hakor, a spring of him who called. It is at Lehi to this day. And he judged Israel in the days of the Philistines 20 years. So we're stopping here. We can't finish Samson today. There's too much story. But Samson has been showing himself to be reckless. I mean, bull in a china closet, not a not a an admirable person by any means. And as you see, he's not a military man. He's not leading forces against the Philistines. He is just using his God-given gifts for his own purposes, basically. So we're going to stop here, and next week we'll pick up on part two of Samson, and we'll draw some more insights from his life and how he fits into this overall downward spiral of the Israelites in the book of Judges. So thank you for being with me this morning. Uh, know that I'm hugging you virtually. Hopefully, I'll see you next week in person.